Hey guys, how's everybody doing? Today I'm going to show you a bee vacuum. I had a removal to do. I'm having my hardwood floors done, and it's kind of a funny story. Called the guy first time I ever spoke to him. His name's Tim, great dude. And I was talking to him about refinishing my hardwood floors in the living room and dining room. And near the end of the conversation, he says, do you know anything about honeybees? And I said, well, a little bit, he says, well, I'm looking at a whole bunch of them in my garage. He said, they had moved into his wall, and he had a full-blown bee nest in his wall. So we worked out a barter, bartering is a great thing. We need to do more of that in this country, or get used to doing more of it, because anyway, I'm not going to get into the conspiracy theory part here, but I'm a firm believer that our country is going to try its best to work its way away from the cash system, and bartering will be the only real way you can get anything accomplished without the government getting a big chunk of it, or a big bank. But anyway, that's my little conspiracy theory. But for this bee removal, I built myself a bee vacuum. It worked flawlessly. It's based on a RoboVac design that I've seen in a couple of places, and one particular YouTube video that's been up for a few years. I'll put a link to it below because I want to give the guy credit. I watched his video, and that's how I built mine. But let me get started with this thing. I guess which end do I want to start with? I guess we'll start with the top. It's got four pieces to it, not counting the beehives itself. It's got the shop vac, which is it in front? You can see the corner of it. It's got the shop vac itself. It's got the top, which the top part consists of two pieces. The actual top with a place to put the shop vac hose, and a damper hole for you to regulate how hard the vacuum pulls. And then the second part of the top is this little cover with number 8 hardwire cloth in it, 1/8 inch little squares in it, so that the bees can't get through it. Just tacked on, and window seal, foam window seal around here to give you a good, nice, tight vacuum. And I've got ants all over everything around here. Your next piece is the introduction shim. Now what happens is you put this rig together, ratchet strap it down to the handles here. You put your vacuum, your shop vac, into the top. Of course, everything would be screwed down nice and tight. And actually, eventually, I'm going to put some little latches on this, so that I don't have to fool with these screws here. All right. You take your hose, which that's another thing I wanted to throw out there, is the hose that they mention in almost every video that I've seen on this is vacuum hose that you can get it at Lowe's, and that stuff is expensive. A 12-foot piece of that stuff is $37. And if this thing's sitting on the floor and you're climbing up a ladder to get to the top of the inside of a wall, you're going to need 12 feet of it. But this is pool vacuum hose in the outdoor section where they keep the pool stuff at Lowe's, Home Depot, whatever. And it's 2 pieces of it. It was $6 for 6 pieces. It was $6 for a 6-foot piece. Now you have to take and cut this little lip off right here, and then you slide it in to itself and tape everything together nice and tight. But for about 12 bucks, you've got let's see, where's the I cannot get centered on this camera here. Hello. Anyway, tape everything together and you've got 12 foot of vacuum hose. You cut your vacuum on and regulate. You don't want this thing pulling very hard at all. Regulate things up and get this thing going, and pull your bees right in here. And you don't want it sucking like a rocket ship. I mean, you don't want to be rocketing those guys down and tumbling them down. You just want to be encouraging them. When they hop up and try to fly out, it just pulls them back. So, you know, as you bump the hose and work them on down, they'll go on in to this bottom part, and they'll climb into this deep hive body, or honey super, whichever size you want. This is completely flexible. You can build it for an 8 frame, a 5 frame, or a 10 frame like I've got. It's the same dimensions as your beehive, because you're using a part of your beehive, the part that the bees are going to stay in, for your vacuum. Let me go ahead and get this hose out of the way here. Try not to knock the camera over with it. Alright, so that's pretty much the way it goes together. You go there. Like I say, you've got the top part. This is so that you can open this up and look down in there and see how things are going. See that they're crawling around and not have to worry about it. Okay, and you've got this introduction shim, and what this is for is when you're done, you've got them all vacuumed up in here, and your bees are walking around in this box. Well, then you've got to do your actual removal and go ahead and take all the brood and the honeycomb out. That's where your second box comes in. You'll have another box that's just for taking, and you'll have frames with rubber bands on them, or string, or whatever. And as you're doing your cutout of the brood, you'll put them in here, and you'll want to line them up the way that they were in the wall or wherever you're doing the cutout from, and you just put the rubber bands across to hold things in place, right? Well, then you put all these, when you get finished with your cutout, you put all these frames in your second box. And you make sure and fill the box up, because the worst thing in the world you can do is take off walking with just 5 frames in it, and these things turn sideways and drop right out the bottom and hit the ground. I've had that happen before. So, you know, HardWayFarms, we learn everything the hard way. But yeah, you definitely want to put all 10 frames in there, even if you don't fill up 10 frames. Okay, you set this guy right here when you're through vacuuming up your bees, and you pull this number 8 hardware cloth out slowly to introduce the bees that you've vacuumed up back to their brood and honey and whatnot. It's such a simple thing. Now the way I built this is I took and I cut all the way. I cut 4 pieces, the size of a beehive, just like I made all the boxes. I did a little rabbit joint here to make everything nice and neat. Then I took the one short end and I cut it right half in two with my saw, with my table saw. Come on out of there. Anyway, as you can see, that number 8 hardwire cloth will just slide right out. Then I went around on each piece and I cut a little groove, not quite all the way through, using my little rip fence, so that when I put this together, that groove would be just perfect. And then right here on the front piece, I don't know if you can tell or not, but since I cut this piece half in two, I just tack nailed it here, 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 and here, and that way the hardwire cloth will just slide right in there and go into place. And you want to make sure that this little groove right here, wait, which way am I going here? This little groove right here is not too wide. You don't want bees coming out of there. They're generally in a bad mood after they've been vacuumed. So I've heard. I didn't have that problem, but the guy in the video that I watched, he did have that problem. He had made his gap there a little too wide, and it wound up all bad for him. He didn't demonstrate it, but he said it, and I believe it. Okay, now then, while you're working the actual vacuum part of it, you want, without their brood, before you remove all their brood and their comb out of the hive, you want to make sure and use frames in here with foundation, because once the bees come through the hole and climb up in here, you're going to have a lot of bees in here, and they don't need to be just standing on top of each other. This box don't need to be empty. It needs to be full, and it needs to have, it would be best if it was drawn comb. They'd just get in there and feel comfortable and go right to work. But at least have foundation on the frames, because just an open empty box, you wind up with bees on top of bees. All right, let's see. Get down to the bottom of this rig. Here's the bottom of it, 1.5-inch hole for the hose, the pool vacuum hose to go into. Again, got your window seal there, so that you got a nice tight seal. Put this in at sort of a slope, so that they come in here and land and can go to walking up and fly on up and get into the box itself. The bottom side, you want to make sure and put some sort of caulking around the edge, so that this is sealed up nice and tight, and you can achieve your vacuum. And then of course the handles here, I went a little fancy, because I had bought these for another project and wound up never using them, and so I use these. But you can use something as simple as a pipe retainer, just something that you can get your ratchet straps in to go across and ratchet this rig together. That's it. Too simple. I mean, I didn't really measure nothing. I just sort of eyeballed things and made sure that my hole that there was a spot here big enough for the hole. That's 1.5 inches. I did go a little bit too big with the hole in the top piece. But a little bit of electrical tape around this, and when I shoved that in there, it sealed it up nice and tight. I would probably suggest, I'm running a 2.8 horsepower vacuum. It worked really good, but I didn't have to use that damper at all. And I guess I would probably suggest going with something a little stronger than that little 2.8 horsepower vacuum, and working your damper, because it really could have used a little more pull. So I would suggest something a little more than that. But again, stick the thing back together a little bit. You've got your bottom box that your pool hose hooks to. You've got your introduction shim with the window seal stuff on it, and the number 8 hardware cloth in there. You got your top with the window foam, what's that stuff called again? Foam window seal stuff on it, and a couple of ants. You guys had terrible trouble with ants this year? My gosh, I've had awful trouble with ants this year. They've been just harassing me to death. And then of course the lid, which again I'm eventually gonna get some sort of latch to go on this, so I don't have to carry my drill with me and run screws into the corners. But that's the rig. Any questions or comments, let me know. I'll show a few pictures of the cutout either at the beginning of this video or at the end. I had great intentions of videoing the whole thing, and I got the wall cut, and I got the pieces pulled out, and I got a little video of the beehive, and then as I got into it, I was covered in honey. I didn't want to touch my camera or my mics anymore, and I was just like, well, I guess that video is going. I'm gonna have to get me a camera person. I don't know. Any volunteers out there, guys? So anyway, that's my bee vacuum. If I forgot anything while I'm putting this thing together, I'll try to do a little caption or a little something to the side to explain. But that's a bee vacuum, and it worked perfectly. I mean, I got them home, and actually I set the brood on top, pulled the and you pull that very slowly. There'll be bees on it, and you want to go nice and slow when you're pulling out the screen from this introduction shim, or you will hurt the bees that are standing on the screen. So nice and slowly, and just sort of you don't even have to pull the thing out. If you pull it just that far, they'll start crawling around the back and going on up into the brood and start taking care of their babies again. It's a great design. I can't imagine any other type of I can't imagine nothing actually being more effective than this style. I've seen bucket styles where you make them out of a 5-gallon bucket. I've seen several different kinds, and I just can't see where anything could be any easier to use than this setup. It's so user friendly because they're in the hive pretty much the whole time. You don't have to transfer them from one thing into another thing. So anyway, guys, y'all take care. Have a great weekend. Jason out. Can't get used to where I'm at. Bye, y'all. Well, I've got my first cutout to do, so this is not going to be a tutorial on how to do a cutout. It's extremely windy today, but we're going to be going into it from inside the garage. We're going to cut this sheetrock out right here and get this hive. Okay, I've taken and cut a tic-tac-toe board in the fellow's wall. So now we're going to start playing tic-tac-toe, honeybee removal style. Again, I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but this is the way I'm going to do it this time. I just set my skill saw to a 1/2 inch depth and went ripping through long ways. then found the wall studs and sort of went up the wall studs. As you can see, that piece right there is about to fall out. So this ought to make it relatively easy to get in there. If they've stuck the honeycomb and hive to the to the sheetrock, I should be able to work with that a little bit. It's just gonna, like I say, first time. So let me get to work. I'll pop back in here in just a few. Okay, well, I'm surprised they wasn't all the way over here, but here we are. And we're fixing to get into the fun stuff. So, but isn't that interesting how they've built in the wall? So, let's get this started.